have been there, it'll be 11 years this fall. And we are among the number of homes that the prior fellow mentioned that were constructed in the 2010, 2011 timeframe. and I'm here primarily out of a concern of safety. Safety for our neighbors and safety for children and others around the neighborhood. As you look at the narrowness of our street, and I'll give you a few facts, I went out and measured similarly and pretty much in agreement with the numbers that we had seen. I reached out to the town about a year ago and was advised at the time that alternating parking proposal was under evaluation. And then I reached out again recently and came to understand it's being considered on a case-by-case basis, hence I reached out for this conversation. The east side of the Oak Ridge Horseshoe is actually quite a bit more narrow than the west side of the horseshoe, as we just heard. East side is about 24 feet 2 inches in front of our home wide, and the west side of the horseshoe is about just short of 30 feet, 29 feet 9 inches. So there is about a 5-foot difference in the width of the road. There is often a significant number of vehicles, whether they're from us as residents or people visiting, that park on the road occasionally. There are a number of multi-vehicle households in that east side stretch, including our home, and we do frequently see cars parked in parallel with each other. I drive a light duty, standard duty pickup truck. And if you put two vehicles of that size side by side, which has happened occasionally, it allows 5 feet roughly for vehicles to pass, which is clearly insufficient for emergency vehicles and so on. Now, while I've never observed an emergency vehicle have a problem, we've seen the trash collection trucks, we've seen the recycled trucks, snow plows, and other large delivery vehicles have to reverse and not be able to transit through the road. This is particularly when we get large vehicles, but can be also when there are smaller vehicles, sort of parallel with a larger vehicle, and it happens occasionally. At this point in time, I did a quick Google search, and I'm not an expert, but a fire truck is anywhere between 8 and 10 feet wide and would not be able to pass. An ambulance is approximately 8 feet wide and will also not be able to pass in an emergency, costing valuable time for somebody who might be in distress or a home that might be ablaze and needing an emergency response. From my vantage point, my request is relative to the east side of the street, and I think that this problem could be mitigated and the safety of the neighborhood improved simply by approval of alternating parking on that east side of the horseshoe. On the connecting section of the horseshoe, there are no residents that face that side, so I've not, in my time there, seen parking there that would become a problem, but it's on the east side where we live. And I just respectfully ask that council consider passing and approving that alternating parking, particularly on the east side of the horseshoe. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to call you Paul. I'm sorry, because I know I'm going to say it wrong again. If you could come up and give us your address, please.
Paul Cholubko, 6410 Oak Ridge. Mayor Meloche, Town Council, everyone else in attendance, first, thanks for your time. I've never done this before. I'm here representing the same side as Rod, the west side of Oak Ridge. I have no issue with the east side. I agree that is more narrow. I can totally understand that trucks would have an issue getting through. As Rod said, the west side, we are 6 feet wider, my height wider. I've never seen an issue with trucks getting through. I have friends on LaSalle Fire, volunteer, and also for sanitation department, and they've never had an issue coming down our road. I know because they bring the trucks down to see, well, for my kids to see. And that's really the reason I'm here. I am a father of young children, and my concern and my wife's and a few of the other parents on the street are concerned about the safety aspect. Having the parking on alternate sides of the street that we currently have creates an artificial chicane to go through the neighborhood. It is the same traffic calming that Windsor is now paying to implement by having narrower streets to slow down vehicles traveling through. By moving all the cars to one side of the street, I fear that we would have faster movement of the vehicles through the neighborhood. And because the west side of Oak Ridge, the original street, has no sidewalk, the kids are in the road, pedestrians are in the road, people walking their dogs are in the road where the cars would be. So I would be concerned about the safety aspect of cars going faster by going to alternate side parking, as is recommended. So I think, as you heard from everyone else before me, if we could modify the recommendation to be alternate side for the east side of Oak Ridge and keep the west side of Oak Ridge as it is now, I think that would please everyone in attendance. To that point, I actually have a petition signed by all 20 of the residents on the west side of Oak Ridge, and all of them agree that they are not in favor of this change currently. I can provide that if you need. I didn't plan ahead.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else who would like to speak for or against? If not, we will move to council. Counselor Carewoods. Before I go to council, I'll have Chief Thiessen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of council. I think ethically, I just want to add a little bit of information. Today, we've learned a lot about the width of a fire truck or a garbage truck and an ambulance and stuff, but one of the things that hasn't been addressed is our ladder truck. So the width is, 8 feet. However, for it to be functional, we do have to put the stabilizing bars, or what they call in the big rig world, outriggers, to stabilize that vehicle. So when we're putting that ladder up in the air, that it doesn't tip. And we have 2 of those outriggers on each side of that truck, which extend about 4.5 feet out. So that adds 9 feet to the width of the truck. And without, like, if we have vehicles parked on both sides of the road, and depending on what obstacles there are, like large trees or the design features of a building, placement of that ladder truck is important to help either extinguish the fire or to help save someone who may be trapped in the second floor of a building because the fire is in the first floor. So I would just like to add that there's additional width for the ladder truck.
Thank you. Councillor Carrick.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just looking at in the presentations and that stuff, I'm completely in support of the east side, 100%, and I'm worried about the corner in the back there. Where it goes down to 20 feet, especially parking maybe be extended because there's alternate parking if it does go on the east side around the corner a little bit. So maybe we can go in there to make sure there's no parking signs there. I guess my question was going to be to the fire about, have we done training runs down there? I know my neighborhood, they're up there all the time doing training runs, running up and down Winfield and in Heritage. So have we done any of that there?
Thank you for your question. Through you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, we plan to do all of our driver training through the months of July and August, so it is nearing completion. It is legislative necessary for us to provide that training every year, and that training does require a certain number of left-hand turns, right-hand turns, narrow streets, wide streets, those kinds of things. And so we change that route every year so that the same residents aren't seeing those fire trucks going down their street every year. But we are very close to completion, as that will end on August 31st.
Okay, thank you. Second, I don't mind picking them off one at a time. I'm not gonna lie, it is irritating. I'd rather see us do a town-wide thing and we just start going across the whole town if we have to. But I'm going to be in favor of the east side tonight, and I'll leave it up to the rest of the council to make their comments.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Capata.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Having listened to the residents, much like my colleague, I'm supportive of what has been presented, and when it's appropriate, Madam Mayor, I'll make an amendment to the recommendation for the east side, as the folks have presented, to be alternate parking and to leave the west side, if I've got the streets right, the west side alone, as per the residents have asked, Madam Mayor.
And could you clarify, does that include that piece along the back side, which is?
To bring up with, I support what Mr. Carrick has just said. Yes, Madam.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Burns?
To the chief. So if you go down there and you have to move or push a truck with that big truck of yours, it's not going to be a problem. The truck will be out of the way. You'll be able to anchor it. And I just, if that's what you would do, I'm not putting words in your mouth, but if that's what you would do, I would certainly like to hear, in the case of a fire, to save somebody's life on the second floor, is that an option? And if so, then the residents can expect his or her car to be damaged. It's never happened yet, but in my 27 years.
That is a difficult question. So, to be honest, I think that a decision to save someone is very important. However, at this point, I am not prepared to say that we are going to push someone's vehicle with a fire truck. Not only does that damage their vehicle, but it would damage our vehicle, and being without one of those pieces of apparatus for us and the rest of the community, I'm not willing to take that risk.
Thank you for the answer, but I know what's going to happen. Thank you. To the residents, I was here for both of those developments. Again, a recommendation comes before council and we have approved them. In hindsight, was a good decision? No. In my 27 years, there's been a few others, so as presented by Councillor Carrick, I will support one on the east side and the west side, and then the neighborhood. You at least talk to each other. So I concur with that, and again, to administration, does that really create any problem to us? Thank you.
Mr. Beggs, go ahead.
Does it create any problems for us for operations, do you mean, Mr. Burns?
Operational, legally?
Not sure about legally. I would maybe just suggest that I have about 3 or 4 other alternating parking requests to bring forward, and I'm not 100% sure how to proceed with the next one. I maybe would add that.
Thank you, Mr. Beggs, and I think we
Thanks.
agree with you on the whole parking bylaw that need to reevaluate how to handle these going forward. If there's no other questions or comments on this one, Councillor Reno?
First of all, I'd like to thank the residents for a very professional report, including maps, including measurements, including a very detailed petition, even though we got two basically doing the same thing. Thank you very much, because it really tells us a story of what the residents want. And to Mr. Begg's point, I would suggest you keep them coming, because, you know, there's going to be a day, we've seen these come across our desk where people don't come out and they say, it's fine, or we have to assume it's fine. But in your case, you had the opportunity to come down and speak either for or against, and you did. And that gave us a very clear message, and your alternatives were very good. And it really gave us more information than we had. So I would suggest you keep them coming, because it gives the opportunity for the residents to engage and to tell us how they feel. And they won't all go one way or the other, but in this case, I think a very good due process was done. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And just to clarify some comments, the reason, which I was just informed, as to why one is 30 and one is 20 is the sidewalk. So the new subdivision has a sidewalk, which is why the road is narrower. So it wasn't to develop or give larger lots, it was actually to incorporate a sidewalk, which became part of our developers agreement probably in the early 2000s, right? Yes, so that's why that second area does have that. So what's been put before us, I agree with completely. The east side, including the paved laneway, which really, if you look at the map, follows anywhere the sidewalk exists, putting alternating parking, which has been recommended by Councillor Carrick and supported by Deputy Mayor Capata. So I will call the question. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. And I will thank Mr. Cholubko, Mr. Vermette, and Mr. Peterson. And we will move on to item number 6, which is the 2024 alternating parking request for Jolly. And we'll have our manager of roads and parks, Mr. Beggs, I guess a quick summary for that one as well, please.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. As we said, this report is, it's the same exact report with the different street names on it. This one is for Jolly. We received this request in the same manner as a request from the residents in the area. And it meets the same criteria as the previous report, and I'm available for questions if there are any.
Thank you very much. So we did receive 5 different submissions. 4 are just written and are in your agenda. And then we had Ms. Coulter? Yes. If you would like to speak, you can come. Okay, just your address too, please.
Yes. Hello, council. My name's Amy Coulter, and I live at 270 Jolly. Basically, I'm here to go against the alternate parking in the sense that in 24 years that we've all lived there, we've never had an issue with emergency vehicles. We've never had an issue with accidents. Our children have grown up there. We've never had any issues whatsoever. We do feel as a whole, these are my Jolly friends, we do feel as a whole that when you start going into alternate parking, it's basically going to, like the other gentleman said for Oak Ridge, you're going to have faster traffic coming through. Having faster traffic coming through is going to be a cause for concern. We also, for people who are in our home, sorry, I wasn't prepared to do this, but people who are in our home, we'd like to have our parking outside in the proximity of our own home, opposed to having to park down the street or find other parking for our guests. I'm kind of lost here, actually. Sorry, I'm looking for some help here.
That's okay. You don't have to say anything.
I really
just-
wasn't prepared
that's
for this
okay.
because it was all in my letter. I would have come more prepared if I was a delegate or knew I was.
Yes, but we do have all the letters and submissions, so council has been able to review those before the meeting, so don't feel like you have to.
Yeah,
add anything.
I just also, when you start bringing emergency vehicles and things like that down, we've never had that issue. The emergency vehicles have gone through our neighborhood every year. It's never been an issue. Thank goodness we haven't had a major issue. However, we haven't seen an issue with the parking in the past, and we've all been there 24 years.
Thank you very much.
Also, sorry, I'd like to
Yeah.
add, Jolly, that whole subdivision is a whole, so why would it be just chosen for Jolly Street when Jolly Street's not the main artery to that subdivision? Runstedler is. So we would want to know why Jolly from Runstedler, not even to the full stop sign, just to the bend, would be considered for alternate parking when the rest of the subdivision was not considered whatsoever. When you come in off of Victory, Runstedler's the main highway, or the main road going through.
Yes, so maybe Mr. Beggs could kind of inform how the policy works right now.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the reason that we would like to look at the whole area, but the reason that we don't is because of we need to get buy-in on the locations. So for example, if somebody from every street did request something tonight, then we would bring them all forward. But council has asked that we bring these forward on a case-by-case basis instead of whole areas of the town. And why certain areas are picked when our engineering team is looking at, like, when a request will come in from a certain home. So then they have to try to pick a start and a finish. So the engineering team looks at the area and tries to come up with the best area that represents who requested it.
Was this a resident request?
Yep,
Off Jolly?
yes.
So that's kind of the way our policy works right now, is that a resident can request it, and then it goes through administration, they get to review it if it matches all of the boxes, and then it comes to council, and then council has a chance to speak with residents who it does affect, and then make that decision. So it's initiated for your situation by one of your residents, one of your neighbors.
Okay, so will there be a policy, like, is there a policy that follows this up? Like, if they have to say they decide that they want to go through and they want to do the alternate parking, do us residents still get the final say? Like, are they going to come to us and be telling us, okay, this is what we're going to do? Are you guys all in agreement? Like, we need some sort of, I know we didn't come in with a petition to say no, but I can guarantee you there's a lot of people on that street who don't want it.
Okay, so technically, this right here, and the vote decides if it happens.
Okay.
And then if it doesn't happen, the resident who put in the complaint can't resubmit for, what is it again?
3 years.
3 years. So, okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else want to speak for or against? No? Go, sure, that's fine. Just your address too, please, and last name.
Good evening, Madam Mayor. Tracy Klingbeil, 260 Jolly. So, sorry, we didn't realize we were going to be speaking if we were submitting. So I just have a couple of questions. Just to follow up on the process. So the member or the resident that submits the request doesn't have to go to their neighbors to request, like to get a petition to get 95%? Okay, so it's completely different than how it is in the city of Windsor. So that's, I just wanted to understand. The resident can just say, I'd like this, you investigate it.
That's
And-
correct, yeah. So we
So
don't
all
have-
of the work is on you guys, they don't have to do any legwork on their own end?
That's correct, and
Okay.
with this one, we don't do a survey as part of it, and mainly that is because our recommendation is that all of LaSalle would be alternating parking. Any new subdivisions that get built, so that the signs are up before the homes even go in, we would implement alternating parking when the street is built. That wasn't done in the past, so this is a way to implement alternating parking in existing areas.
Okay, I understand. So just a couple of other points to touch on that are probably in most of our letters to council. There are a few children with special needs on our streets. We are concerned that not having the traffic on both sides, as mentioned, allowing for traffic calming. Our side of the street, our particular section of Jolly is 50. The speed limit's 50. The main artery of Runstedler has 40. So every time there is an accident on Front Road where the traffic is rerouted through, they stay on ours because it's 50 and Runstedler's 40. So if you enable, alternate parking just on our section, just from stop sign to stop sign, it's going to be a free-for-all. There are a few houses on our street that already like to travel a little above the speed limit, let's say. So that's already a problem, but they do have to slow down, especially where these few houses are, where we're worried about the kids. Our kids are all grown up, so in my house, I'm on the south side of Jolly, and we don't have the sidewalk. The sidewalk's on the other side. My neighbors, the people on the other side of the street can only fit 2 cars in their driveway. I can get 4 in my driveway. So right there, I already get an extra cars in mine, but I have 5 cars in my family because my adult children can't afford to move out yet. Can't afford to move out yet. So we have 5 cars. Yes, we're always going to have a car on the road, except for when we can bring one in onto the side lot in the wintertime. So we are impacted that way. One of the other things that we did was a little bit of a measurement. We will lose 14 spots in this one section of the street from the corner to the corner. 14 is a lot, especially when the north side of the street can only get 2 cars in their driveway. So that's just something to consider. I think the rest of our arguments or requests against it are in our letters. So we just ask that you consider and vote no. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Okay, members of council. Councillor Carrick, you want to start?
Sure. Thank you, Your Worship. So I'm not against alternate parking. I've supported it all along. I think the problem is we need to maybe revisit the policy itself. I think we need to look at maybe if there's a certain width that's automatic, it shouldn't even come to council. There should be maybe at least 2/3 of the residents on a roadway if it's a little wider, and it's been in the past. I just think those are kind of ideas we need to look at, because every time we do this, tugging and pulling, And don't get me wrong, we have serious issues here with some of the spots to get down, especially for emergency vehicles, snow plows. Quite frankly, they just won't go down the road. I mean, and it's illegal to park if there's a snowstorm anyways. So there should be ticketed, I'm assuming, right? That's not the case, we don't have that, well, we can work on that. But having said that, I just think it's just time we just revisit it, and I'm okay with that. Only because we're just dealing with small, tiny portions, and it affects everything. But having said that, I think we need to look at the criteria and how it actually works again, and I'd be willing to look at that. Thank you, Your Worship.
Deputy Mayor Akpata.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Much to my colleague, again, I agree with my friend, Mr. Carrick, and to the point that Ms. Klingbeil brought up about adult children at home, I have adult children at home. We could not do it either on our street as well. So I understand what the residents have brought forth, and again, as my colleague, Mr. Reno, has spoken to, folks have come here, given their own time to speak directly to us to tell us what they wish. I'll be voting against the motion in support of what the residents have brought forth, Your Worship.
Councillor Riccio-Spagnolo.
Thank you, through you. So to lose 14 spots, I think, is detrimental. I don't think that's wise to do that. Also, if Mrs. Coulter, when you came up and you had mentioned that, you know, you've been there for several years, over a couple decades, and there's been no concerns with anything, why fix it if it's not broken type attitude is how I feel. So I agree with Deputy Mayor Akpata and my fellow colleague here, and I'm against it as well.
Any other questions or comments? No. So I think one thing's obvious, we need to review the policy. It's not working the way it is, and that's, I think, partly too, as we're a ever-changing municipality, and part of the conversation we had earlier was we're starting to see homes with older children. I have a house with, 2 to 18 plus, and there's always 4 cars. And then when people visit or multifamilies move in, plus we're starting to see ADUs in neighborhoods, which means there's more vehicles there as well. Taking those spots away will cause more of an issue somewhere else, and we're still not sure how that's going to affect everyone. At this time, I'm going to agree with all of my colleagues as well. I don't think this is something we should move forward with. I think we need to review the policy, and I agree with the idea put forward that maybe so many residents on a block need to be in favor of it before it can come to council, and have the residents do some of the legwork to be sure that that is something wanted, but maybe we can explore other municipalities and what they do. So for now, I'll call the question, which, or a motion, I don't think it was a motion put forward yet. So, Councillor Burns.
Motion to deny the request for alternate parking.
Okay, so that is moved by Councillor Burns and support by Councillor Reno. All in favor of denying the request? And that is carried. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Coulter and Ms. Klingbeil, for presenting, even though you weren't prepared to. Appreciate it. Okay, moving on to item number 7, which is the Front Road Master Drainage Study Stage 2 final report, which is the Director of Public Works, Mr. Osborne.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of council. So tonight's report is to recommend that council adopt the final EA report for Stage 2 of the Detroit River Master Drainage Study. Just to give a quick recap of the Master Drainage Study, this is through the DMAF grant that we've received. The Stage 1 area, which is from Reham to Gary, is done the EA. We're done the EA, we're in the detailed design stage, and we're hoping to tender and do some of the storm work in that area in 2025. The Stage 2 area, which is the area that this report is in regards to, is in the Marintet Drain area, and we've finished the EA. I have Steve Brown from Stantec Consulting, which is our consultant that was working on the project online, I hope still, and he's going to go through some of the technical items in the report and some of the recommendations, and then we'll be available for any council questions.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I am still here. You guys can
good.
hear me okay? In spite of the power outages and all that, it sounds like we're going. I am going to share a screen here to share my presentation. Give me a sec. And can you tell me if you can see that okay?
Yes, we can.
All right. Excellent. We're on. Um, So thank you, Madam Mayor and members of council. My name is Steve Brown. I'm a water resources engineer and a project manager with Stantec Consulting. And I'm here to give you a quick overview of the stage 2 of the master plan Class EA process. So a quick roadmap on where we're going to go over the next couple of minutes. I'm going to start with a bit of background, some of which Mr. Osborne has already given you. I'll talk about the alternatives that we looked at, describe the preferred alternative in a little bit more detail, and then conclude with some next steps. And for some reason now I can't, there we go. All right, so the master plan process was initiated following the record high water levels in the Detroit River in 2019 and 2020 that resulted in extended ponding on Front Road and other locations, particularly near the shoreline. The master plan and associated Class EA reviews the portions of the stormwater drainage system that have a direct connection to the Detroit River or to the Marintet Drain and its tributary drains. And the main objective of that plan is to identify potential infrastructure improvements that'll help protect public and private property from the effects of stormwater flooding, while also protecting the natural environment. The study consists of the areas draining into the Detroit River from Turkey Creek in the north down to Malden Road in the south. Study is being completed in 3 separate stages, and they're shown on this slide. Stage 1 in red includes the catchments along Front Road between Turkey Creek and Gary Avenue, and that was completed in 2023. And Mr. Osborne gave you a quick update on the process, or the status there as it's going towards construction next year. Stage 2 is in yellow, and it includes the catchments serviced by the Marintet Drain. And stage 3 is in purple and includes the catchments along Front Road between Victory Street and Malden Road. Each stage has its own milestones, consultation opportunities, and final reports. And this presentation and report focuses only on stage 2, which encompasses the area draining to the Marintet Drain in yellow on the screen. So the scope of work for the project has a number of tasks. It started with the collection and review of background information, and that included engineering drawings, rainfall data, soil conditions, flood history, and so on. And a number of field inspections were conducted as well to fill in any gaps that were identified in that background information. A natural heritage study for all 3 areas was conducted and completed. And an initial public information center was held to introduce the project again for all 3 areas. After that, when we get into the more detailed technical work within each particular stage, where we build and calibrate a computer model of the stormwater system, that allows us to assess and evaluate where flooding occurs, what the causes of flooding are, and what happens under different conditions. We identify problem areas and develop alternative solutions for how those might be addressed. And we take that information back out to the public again for another public information center meeting to present that and share specifically for stage 2. And then we complete the process by finalizing the alternative solutions based on consultation both with staff and with feedback from the public. And the findings and recommendations and so on are all summarized in a stormwater master plan study report, and I believe that has been attached to your agenda today. So 5 alternative solutions were considered for the stage 2 area. Alternative 1 was the do nothing option, which is basically leave everything as it stands, and that's used as a basis of comparison for all of the other options. Alternative 2 looked at increasing the size of all the storm sewers within the stage 2 area. Alternative 3 looked at installing permanent pumping stations at 3 key outlet locations. Alternative 4 looked at a combination of measures. They included increasing the storm sewer sizes, installing pumping stations, as well as replacing some of the existing culverts on the Marintet Drain. And alternative 5 was looking at private drainage solutions where private property owners would undertake drainage improvements on their own properties. So an example would be to maintain private drainage systems like eaves troughs, making sure they outlet further from the house, making sure swales are graded properly and lots are graded appropriately so that water sheds away from the houses. So all the alternatives were evaluated using a range of criteria. It included environmental, social, cultural, technical, and financial criteria. And the results of that analysis are summarized on this slide. You can see how each of the different alternatives scored for all of the criteria, and the bottom line is sort of the overall for that particular alternative. You can see that on the right, the alternative 5 there is recommended as the preferred alternative. The reason for alternative 5 being preferred it comes down to a number of reasons. It had limited or no impacts to environmental, social, or cultural features, since all of the improvements would be conducted by private property owners on private property. Our computer modeling work concluded that alternatives 2 and 3 actually don't significantly change the flood risk within the stage 2 catchment area, so any expenditures there would not really be worthwhile. And alternative 4, while it offered some improvement, did not really get rid of any significant problems, and it was by far the most expensive alternative. So again, a significant cost without much gain. And alternative 5 provides a targeted improvement that addresses flooding issues as needed. So if there's particular properties or lots that have issues, they can be dealt with directly. So as far as next steps go, if council adopts the stage 2 master plan EA in principle, the town will then issue the notice of study completion and make the report available to the public, I believe via the website. Because the recommended alternative in this case works on private property, it's actually exempt from the EA process, so no further process is required as far as the ministry is concerned, so that makes it very simple. And the last item here as far as next steps go is to continue with the stormwater assessment and alternative solution development for stage 3, those areas to the south of stage 2. Thank you very much. That's a quick overview, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. Councillor Carrick?
Thanks, Your Worship. So I'm just looking at the report itself, and it says significant wildlife habitat. And there's some mentioned here, is it snake hibernaculum and other things? So is this just a general?
Yes.
Paul, okay.
Yeah, there
Just
are a
wanted to
number
make
of
sure
general areas that were identified as potential. The major one, actually, that wasn't one of the larger area-wide ones. The whole Detroit River frontage was identified as a significant habitat area. So lots of areas, but they didn't have a significant impact on what we were doing here because particularly in this case, anything we were looking at it was recommended just for private property.
Okay, yeah, because I'm looking at the rest of the report, and there's a ton of other things like species and plants and all kinds of stuff. So that's just a general broad view of brush? Okay,
correct.
Thank you. Thanks for that.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Burns?
The Marintet drain itself either needs to be cleaned or something has to be done at the mouth. When you're looking west towards the river, there's trees, there's whatever in there. So what you're saying is, and we own part of that, on the north side of that drain, and there's always flooding in that area when we get excessive rains. To do nothing, can you explain the do nothing when we have an issue there, in my mind, if not in yours? Thank you.
The recommendations that we have and the evaluations that we looked at, the improvements that were considered, such as the storm sewer increases, pumping stations, and so on, they didn't improve anything. So there was no point in going any further on that in that direction. Even the combination alternative 4, offered some minor improvements, but really didn't help anything significantly, which is why we wound up with the preferred alternative being sort of it works on private property. That would include sort of town property. So if there are improvements such as removing vegetation to clear drainage paths, that type of thing, that would also apply to this. And I would think the town would be part of that, just as a property holder within the drainage area.
Thank you. I'm going to have Mr. Mara add on to that too.
Thank you. Further to Mr. Brown's points, and Mr. Brown is probably not familiar or aware of this, and not to spoil the next council meeting, but there is an appointment coming forward for the Marintet Drain for a drainage engineer to initiate that work through the Drainage Act. So to your point, Councilor Burns, it is recognized, and coming out of this, we know that there is some maintenance required on the Marintet Drain. So stay tuned. Next council meeting, if council awards the appointment, it'll be something that moves forward.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? There being none, the recommendations that the report of the Director of Public Works dated August 9th, 2024 regarding the Front Road Master Drainage Study Stage 2 final report be received, and that council approves the final Stage 2 environmental assessment report, and that council authorizes the issuance of the notice of study completion. Councilor Renault, Deputy Mayor Capata, all in favor? That carries. Consent agenda has 2 items. Recommendations that we receive 1 and 2 on the consent agenda for August 27, 24 be received unless anyone wants to speak directly to any of those items. No? Okay. Can we get a motion to receive? Councilor Riccio Spagnolo and Councilor Carrick, all in favor? That carries. Any committee matters to discuss? No. Questions and statements by council members. Councilor Carrick and Deputy Mayor Capata after that.
So, thank you, Your Worship. So, brought up earlier in the meeting, so when we have snow events, particularly major snow events, we don't have a bylaw that forces people to stay off the road. So would it be appropriate to make a motion that we, for the next meeting, set it up so that we can look at that as a report to come back to council? Because I think that's important. So can I do that? Ask for a report to come back looking at major snow events, to look at something to remove cars from the roads to make it easier for our services to get up and down. Is that okay?
If someone wants to, Councilor Riccio Spagnolo supports. Do we need an all in favor on that as well? And all in favor? Carries. And Deputy Mayor Capata?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, this evening has got me to think that we need to review a couple of our bylaws. And in support of what administration has said, so if it's appropriate or when it's appropriate, Your Worship, I think parking and alternative parking, and the reason I don't want them separate is because it's demonstrated today that despite the fact that being different bylaws, it's conjoined in support of what administration has said. So along with what Mr. Carrick has done, we seem to be looking at a number of documents that control the same type of issue. So if it's appropriate, I'm not suggesting that we do it separately, but if I'd like to ask if we could have a review of those 2 bylaws based on some of the discussions we had today to see how admin recommends that we could modernize, bring up something like that so that we can address what transpired today.
Mr. Mara?
Thank you. The 3 requests that I have heard all relate back to the parking bylaw. So they're all contained within one bylaw. A request for restrictions during snow events, how we handle alternative parking, and all of those things come back to the parking bylaw. So if council wishes, we can do a review of where we currently sit with a number of these policies and try to answer the 3 specific questions that were brought up tonight with a report. It's going to take us some time to get through that, and then we can come back to council with a number of different recommendations. We'll have to break it up so that if council agrees with one but doesn't agree with others, we'll figure out how to best deal with that in a report and bring something forward. But it'll be a comprehensive report because one leads to the other. They're all together, hand in glove sort of aspect to make sure we deal with it in its entirety.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mr. Mara's dead nuts bang on. So if I don't need to pass a motion, if that's what's understood with what Mr. Carrick had, then I'm fine. If I need to do something separate, I'll look for your direction.
We will need to amend the original motion. So would it be best if Councilor Carrick, is that okay? So
I'll make the motion to withdraw my motion if it's covered under what's coming next.
do you need anything else for us to withdraw? Yeah. Okay, so that motion's with withdrawal. We'll start again. Whoever would like to make the motion regarding the entire parking policy. Deputy Mayor Capada.
Thank you, Your Worship. To what Mr. Mara has said, we've demonstrated here that the parking bylaw has a number of issues, and I'll leave it to admin, as Mr. Mara has eloquently outlined, to do however many phases is appropriate for the review of the bylaw, to bring them in pieces so that it can all be done in a very cohesive manner. And so everyone here has sat through the discussion. I believe we know what we need to touch, and I will leave it to our administrative folks to do that.
Okay, so we have a mover with Deputy Mayor Capada, and we have, Ms. Beggs?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have a question. I just want to make sure, because we'll be in charge of looking at the bylaw and assessing it against the merits of what council thinks is important. So I just want to make sure that I have an accurate understanding of kind of the pinch points. So what I'm hearing is that we should review the alternate parking provisions within the bylaw, the ability to regulate parking during snow events. Is there another one? Is there a third?
Mr. Mara had a third, so. Okay, then it's.
Just those two?
Then
Okay,
it's two.
I just want to be clear on what we're assessing.
Councillor Carrick, go ahead.
So I certainly appreciate that, it's great. I just want to make sure that with the comments we've made tonight, so that, example, if a road width is too narrow, those kind of things will all come into the scope, then it's automatic, that kind of thing? You look at all that stuff? Okay, thanks.
So we have a mover. I need support by Councillor Carrick. All in favor? And that carries. Any other questions or statements? None? Notices of motion? We have no closed session to report, which brings us to our bylaws. And it's recommended that the following bylaws be given a first, second, and third reading and finally passed. Bylaw 8917, a bylaw to approve the submission of an application to Ontario Infrastructure and Lands Corporation for long-term financing of certain capital works of the Corporation of the Town of LaSalle, and to authorize the entering into of a rate offer letter agreement pursuant to which the municipality will issue debentures to OILC. 8918, a bylaw to amend bylaw 8798, being a bylaw to regulate vehicular parking within the limits of the Town of LaSalle. Are these both on here? I would say I'm reading them and they're not. Go ahead.
Excuse me, I was going to say that the next two bylaws were, if the recommendations were approved tonight, so I would say the next two should be skipped. The numbers, I don't have it in front of me.
So 8918 and 8919 will be removed from bylaws. We will only be doing the one. Okay? Just, well, that will have to come back to us because it'll be a different bylaw because we are putting something different than what was written down. So that'll be probably the next meeting, I would assume. So it is just bylaw 8917. Okay? Councillor Reno, support by Councillor Burns, all in favor? And that carries. And confirmatory bylaw 8920 be given a first, second, and third reading and finally passed. Councillor Reno, Councillor Carrick, all in favor? Schedule of meetings is listed below. Thank you for joining us in person, online, and have a great long weekend. Bye-bye.